What's up, everybody? Welcome back to episode 2 of the Commissioner's Office podcast. My name is Daniel, and we are a quarter of the way through the NFL season, and I am going to give my thoughts on each team's performance so far. We've had a pretty interesting start to the NFL season. Some teams have caught me off guard in terms of my expectations, and others have disappointed in terms of expectations. And there's been much more in this weird 2020 NFL season filled with fan restrictions, injuries, and just a whole bunch of other stuff. So we're going to dive straight in. But before, we're going to talk about some of the COVID outbreaks. I'm going to briefly share my thoughts. So, I thought it was inevitable, essentially, that teams were going to have COVID outbreaks. And, as I think that it was going to happen. The Titans, if you don't know, have had at least 15 players and staff test positive for COVID. And the Patriots have had their two best players in Stephon Gilmore and Cam Newton test positive at the time of me recording this. It's not good for the league, and it really isn't. And I'm no scientist, but in my personal opinion, how hard is it to contain this? These people are being tested every day. I personally don't really see why they are even letting the virus in. That's, it's just, they're being tested every day. They know the rules. They know the protocol. I think there should be harsh punishments if they're able to contact trace back to one person, because they're just being stupid. They're being negligent, essentially. Obviously I hope that people like Cam Newton and Stephon Gilmore and all the Titans players and staff, hopefully they have a safe recovery and they will be back to playing in no time. With that out of the way, we're going to start with the AFC East division. So the leader of the AFC East division right now, 4 weeks through the season, is none other than the Buffalo Bills. I was sort of expecting it, because being the rest of that division is New England, Miami, and the Jets. The Jets are a glorified college team, so, I didn't think they were going to win the division. Miami is still building, and New England doesn't have Brady anymore. I picked Buffalo to win the division anyway. I did not expect them to be 4-0. I expected them to be 3-1, maybe 2-2, but they're surprising me, man. This Buffalo team has outperformed my expectations by a lot. And the key has been the development of Josh Allen. He has burst onto the scene now, and he has just played out of this world. To start off, he's got a 70.9% completion percentage, which I'm pretty sure the record for a completion percentage in an NFL season is 70, set by Sam Bradford of all people a while ago, which is, that's insane. He already has 1,300 yards through 4 weeks. That's ridiculous. He's got 12 touchdowns and only 1 interception. A lot of people were a little bit skeptical about Josh Allen in the 2018 draft, I believe. He was a kid from a lower class school in Wyoming, who had a big arm and had kind of some accuracy issues. But Josh Allen has really done a nice job of improving on his strengths that he already had and reducing his weaknesses. In my opinion, his biggest weakness was throwing interceptions. He was always kind of a gunslinger. He has a huge arm, but he never really had that number one receiver, which never really helped him. But last year he didn't look too bad. 20 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, which is pretty good. But this year he has just soared above expectations, and I think that's most of the reason why this Buffalo team is 4-0. Another reason is their new acquisition, Stephon Diggs. They traded a first-round pick for him, and I guarantee you that they will not regret it. Buffalo gives up a first-round pick that wasn't really that high, and they traded it for a clear-cut number one receiver in Stephon Diggs that needed a change of scenery, and he's done his job, man. Stephon Diggs is a good player. In fact, he's more than a good player. He's a fantastic player, and he has definitely served the role of that number one receiver. Because if you think about it, Buffalo hasn't had a number one receiver in. It's been a while, man. Stephon Diggs is off to a really, really good start this year. He's already got 26 receptions for 403 yards. 2 touchdowns ain't bad either. 15 yards a reception. If he keeps up that pace, that would go for second in his career best. So, Buffalo is showing that they are a real Super Bowl contender. They're showing that they can really compete with the best in the league. Now, I don't believe they've played New England yet. They will soon. They also got Kansas City coming up. That's going to be a good one. But they've already beaten the Rams, which is they're a very good team, But overall, so far, I really like what I'm seeing from Buffalo. In second place is the evil empire itself, the New England Patriots. No surprise there. But yeah, New England's off to a 2-2 start. It's not too surprising. They still got Bill Belichick there. He just keeps pumping out good players, and he just keeps, cloning people. He practices the dark arts. But so far, the Cam Newton experiment, I think, has been pretty good, barring that he doesn't miss too much time from his COVID issue. But, they took an L to the Kansas City Chiefs. I expected them to lose, especially when they didn't have Newton, though. When you start Brian Hoyer is a god, but he is not good enough to beat Patrick Mahomes. But so far, it's been really interesting to see a Bill Belichick offense that isn't just like checkdowns, and it's interesting because Bill Belichick has ran the same system for like 20 years now, and he really hasn't had a mobile quarterback like ever. So far, Cam Newton's played pretty well. They've had the usual supporting cast, like Rex Burkhead has been doing his thing. Sony Michel's been dealing with an injury. Julian Edelman's been a little bit banged up, but Julian Edelman's always banged up. That's why he's always getting hurt. Most of the team is back. Hopefully, Stephon Gilmore and Cam Newton can recover from their COVID issue. But New England, they keep rumbling this year. One thing that I think might cost them a playoff spot, even with the new seeding changes this year, it really depends on how Newton does. If Newton has to sit out for a while because of COVID, you never know, man. I mean, granted, Jared Stidham didn't look great in his first start. I think they're going to go with Hoyer, in my opinion, because I think he's the right decision. But I mean, I don't think you're going to the playoffs with Brian Hoyer. No matter how good of a coach you are, no matter how good of a supporting cast you have, I just don't see it. We'll move on now to the Miami Dolphins. Operation Tank for Tua was a success, although Tua has not played yet because Ryan Fitzpatrick has been actually pretty solid so far. The 1-3 record might not tell the whole story, but you know what? I think this Dolphins team is at least watchable this year. There's been a lot of hate go their way, I think, because last year they were the annual tanking team. Brian Flores was accused of just straight up tanking. A lot of the players were just like, why should I even play here if you're just going to trade me for a draft pick? But I said this before, and I'll say this again. I don't think Brian Flores has ever tried to tank. I think Miami needed a deep rebuild after being mediocre for years, and I think they made the right decision. Brian Flores, in my opinion, is a good head coach. I think he's very serviceable. Obviously, coming from that New England system, if you were a coach in New England, you are programmed to not tank. Because if you showed any signs that was your prerogative, Bill Belichick would have probably he would have just deleted you. You just would have been deleted. But you know what? This Dolphins team, they've had to play some tough teams so far: New England, Buffalo, Jacksonville, which they won, and Seattle. But they put up a fight against Seattle. I don't see them as a playoff team personally, especially with Buffalo, who seems like about as a sure thing as you can get so far, and New England I think will sneak in. But Miami, I think they're just going for improvement. They had a good draft, and they just want improvement from last year. That brings us to the last place team, which is the New York Jets. So, this team is a mess. I've said it before. Adam Gase is probably the most incompetent head coach in the entire league. Like, he is just straight up incompetent, and he doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know how to run an offense. It's amazing to me that a guy who was once a head coaching prodigy could just be so horrible now. He does not know how to coach to the team's strengths. He's single-handedly screwing up Sam Darnold's career, and I don't know why he even signed Le'Veon Bell, because he clearly doesn't even like him as a player or person. I mean, Adam Gase really should have been fired last year. He's going to get fired this year. In my opinion, it's inevitable. He will get fired maybe after they lose to the Cardinals this week. I really don't know. But you know what? The Jets have just been poorly ran for the last, 10 years now, and I really hope that they do well. In my opinion, I think they're going in the right direction, but it won't be really in the right direction until Adam Gase is out of there. Got one division down, 7 to go. The next team we're going to go to is the AFC North, and that division leader is the Pittsburgh Steelers. I was not expecting this. The Steelers, unfortunately, had to postpone a game due to COVID. They didn't have an outbreak themselves, but I think they were playing the Titans. That's why they had to cancel. The Steelers are a very interesting team. I did not think they were going to do well this year. I personally don't. I think this is going to be Big Ben's last year. I don't think he was going to be good, and I thought he was going to get hurt and Mason Rudolph would have to take over. So far, he has not shown any signs of injury. It looks like Juju is starting to look like his old self again. The defense seems to be as good as advertised, but here's the thing. They've had a relatively easy schedule so far. Week 1, they played the Giants. They're no powerhouse. Neither are the Broncos. Texans have just been off to a bad start. Then they had their unexpected bye week. Then they got to play Philly, Cleveland, Tennessee, Baltimore. Those are a tough few games. Eagles, they might be able to win. Cleveland's going to give them a challenge. Steelers love to play down to their competition. I am not really high on this team. This has happened to the Steelers before. They coast on high-end talent, and then they just crash. But, I don't know. Now, the factory of sadness themselves, Cleveland. They're actually off to a 3-1 start. They are, dare I say, watchable now. Baker Mayfield has looked pretty solid so far. I haven't seen anything weird from them. They got mopped by the Ravens in week 1, but since then, their defense has been a little shaky. They've allowed a good amount of points. Allow 30 points to the Bengals, allow 20 points to the football team, and they almost blew that game to the Cowboys. But you know what? I like what they're seeing. I like what I'm seeing so far. Baker Mayfield doesn't look bad, as I previously said. Nick Chubb is going to be out for at least a few weeks. I think they put him on IR, so that's definitely a huge blow to the team. But that's why they bring in Kareem Hunt. The man may be a jerk off the field, but he did lead the league in rushing one year. So the offense is doing pretty well. I'm very concerned about that defense, though. That defense is currently ranked 27th in the NFL. So I think they got a shot at a wild card. But it really depends on how the third place team, Baltimore, does. Baltimore is also 3-1. Lamar Jackson has been a little bit banged up recently. He's been dealing with a little bit of an injury. I've heard that it shouldn't really affect him. They got off to a good start. They took out the Browns and the Texans. They just didn't really have an answer for Kansas City. Kansas City, if you shut down Lamar Jackson, you shut down the entire squad. You take out all the defense's momentum. That's exactly what Kansas City did. But they were able to rebound, and they took down the Washington football team in Week 4. I love saying the football team's name like that. But Lamar Jackson doesn't look too bad so far. He had that long rushing touchdown in week 4. The key for the Ravens is definitely going to be just keeping the offense going. As long as Lamar Jackson is humming, the defense will take it from there. Calais Campbell has not played too much, but he was a good trade to get. They just signed Marlon Humphrey to that massive deal, which is I think they gave him like $100 million, which is, for a corner, that's almost unheard of. As long as the Ravens just keep Jackson healthy and keep him going, I think they will easily win that division. I think Pittsburgh is going to crash any week now. I think they're pretty much done coasting off of Big Ben's probably hurt elbow. I just don't see Cleveland keeping this up. I think they're going to be mediocre the rest of the way through. I would say Cleveland is a 12-win team at best. Baltimore the sky's the limit for them. And last place team in the AFC North, not too much of a surprise, is Cincinnati. Their second-year coach, Zach Taylor now. It's not too bad. You know what? I didn't think this team was going to be too bad. I like what I'm seeing from Burrow so far. He really hasn't got that much help. He does have a solid offense. Their line is... their line's not really that good. But, I really think Joe Burrow is going to be a fantastic player in this league. I really do. I think he's going to be really good. They tied to the Eagles. I mean, I guess that's better than a loss. But you know what? I guess a tie's a tie. But, they got some tough matchups coming up. They got to play Baltimore next. Don't see them winning that game. Indianapolis, as I had to witness as a Bears fan last week, apparently has really good defense. I think they'll get the job done there. Cleveland, not looking too hot for Cincinnati. Tennessee's kind of a wild card, no pun intended. But you know what? The Bengals, just like the Dolphins and a lot of these basement dwellers the past few years, I think all they're looking for is progress. But this is the thing. I'm speaking directly to you, Zach Taylor. Protect your golden goose in Joe Burrow, because Joe Burrow's taken some nasty hits this year so far. If he gets hurt, your entire team crashes, man. You got to protect him at all costs. So this offseason, I would say you have to invest in an offensive line. You have some good receivers. You have Tyler Boyd, Auden Tate, Joe Mixon you locked up. It's a solid offense. The defense needs some work, but as long as you protect Burrow, this team might have a future. Now we're going to move on to the AFC South. In my opinion, this is probably the weakest division in the league. It might be. But somehow, I did not think this was going to happen. Tennessee is the king of the AFC South so far through 4 games, although they've only played 3 because they have not managed their COVID situation well. They still have cases going on, I think like 15 days out since the start of the outbreak. I don't really know what this team is going to do because another game might be canceled, A.J. Brown hasn't played a lot this year, which is not good. Ryan Tannehill, I personally don't think he's going to be that good. This year, he hasn't been horrible. Good completion percentage. The yards are fine. Touchdown to interception ratio is good. The thing is, though, you're going to pay him $25 million a year to throw for 800 yards through 4 games, which is about a 200 a game. That's not enough, man. I really do think if you're going to pay him all that money, he has to be worth the money. And I personally just don't think he is. Derrick Henry has been off to a little bit of a slow start, but still putting up okay numbers. The defense is 15th in the league. The offense is 12th. The middle of the pack, which is, I don't know. I assumed that this team was either going to go 8-8 or 3-13. So far, I don't think they're going to lose 13 straight, but I think they're just going to end up middle of the pack. I think if they were going to even have a shot at the Super Bowl, it would have been last year, but no one was going to take out Kansas City that year. I don't see them holding on to the lead in the division. You know why? Because Indianapolis is in second. They're 3-1 as well. I was a little bit skeptical about this team as well, but they have the best defense in the league. I mean... this is what I was saying after the Bears unfortunately took an L to them last week. Cincinnati, Indianapolis didn't really have huge expectations going into this year. They brought in Phillip Rivers. to be a mentor to Jacoby Brissett, at least I assume, because Philip Rivers is a little bit on the older side. But, Rivers has done his job this year. He hasn't done great, but, I think he's in that point of his career where he's unfortunately just a game manager now. As long as he doesn't throw a ton of interceptions, I think he'll be okay. They've had to deal with a lot of injuries. Marlon Mack got hurt. Trey Burton hasn't really played a lot. Rocky Sin hasn't really played a lot. Ty has been kind of slow. It's a very interesting team. I'm really looking forward to see if that defense can keep it up. DeForest Buckner has shown that he has been a good pickup, and the better they do, the worse that trade looks for the 49ers. So we'll have to see how they do. Offense 17th in the league currently. I think it's about where I expected, but I'm a little bit skeptical. I think that this team, or really anyone in the AFC South, is going to win the division on like 10 to 11 wins at best. I don't really think this is a good division. And I just, I don't know. Jacksonville is in third place. I did not really expect that, but you know what? Jacksonville is, they're not looking too hot. Past few years, they've had some problems both on the field and, higher up. A lot of their executives, Tom Coughlin, have not really been very good. They're very, low end of the spectrum in terms of talent. 23rd in offense and defense. They're just, I think this is the worst team in the league right now. In terms of talent, as well as performance, they won week 1. Gardner Minshew, I don't really think he's the starting option anyway. I think that they should take a quarterback in this year's draft. Look for Trevor Lawrence, look for Justin Fields, something like that. James Robinson has been a nice surprise. He's already got 3 touchdowns on the year. He's been pretty solid. But, this team actually has a pretty good offense. DJ Chark and D.D. Westbrook are very good receivers. Drafted Laviska Shenault, who's supposed to be pretty good. They just are a quarterback away. Unfortunately, however, that Saxonville defense from a few years ago is gone. No one there anymore. Ngakoue's out. Calais Campbell is out. Jalen Ramsey's out. Boye is not there anymore. It's just really sad because I really thought this team would contend for a Super Bowl one day, but it fell apart just as quickly as it began. Jacksonville, my stock is not too high on them. I don't think they're going to be that good, but you know what? Again, it's an improvement. I think they're going in the right direction. One team that is not going in the right direction are the last place Houston Texans. I expected this team to win pretty easily, but they haven't. They're 29th in offense, 27th in defense. No team with Deshaun Watson should be 29th in offense. None. They've been reinforcing this narrative for the past few years now. Bill O'Brien is a bad head coach and should not be anywhere near the GM position. And it showed, because I was wondering this season, how are they going to justify trading Hopkins? What is an injury-riddled Brandon Cooks and a mediocre Randall Cobb really going to bring to this team? And my questions were right, because none of them have really done that much. Deshaun Watson is running for his life because they don't have any line. And it's just been sad because this team has wasted. This team once had Deshaun Watson, Jadeveon Clowney, J.J. Watt, and DeAndre Hopkins all on the same team. And they didn't even get to the divisional round with them. That is unacceptable. And for that, Bill O'Brien definitely deserved to go. He deserved to leave. Good riddance, because he's a terrible head coach. The experiment just didn't work. And they're 0-4. I don't really know what to do anymore. The Texans, I would say tank, but they don't have their first rounder. They gave it up for Laramie Tunsil. Miami has it. So it's not looking good for this Texans squad. Our last division in the AFC is the AFC West. And no surprise, the leader so far is Kansas City. Patrick Mahomes is steamrolling everyone. Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce are doing fine. Their defense has actually played surprisingly well this year. We've seen some good stuff from Mecole Hardman so far. Andy Reid's face shield is just making their opponents just quiver at the sight of him. Andy Reid is an incredibly scary player to go up against, or scary coach. They've reduced the injuries pretty well. They did lose Laurent Duvernay-Tardif, who is nobly helping his fellow Canadians up there, because he actually has like a medical degree, so he's like a doctor. It's really funny. But there's really not much to say. Patrick Mahomes hasn't thrown an interception through a quarter of the season. In my opinion, I think he's going to be the MVP this year. But good stuff from Kansas City so far. They don't seem to be hungover from that Super Bowl at all. In second are the Las Vegas Raiders. Definitely feels weird saying that name. They will always be from Oakland to me. The Raiders, I was kind of confused on this team. I really didn't know where they were going to go because, in my opinion, John Gruden shouldn't have been the head coach. I don't really think he's fit to be a coach anymore. Mike Mayock, I thought, was a good decision to bring him in as GM. Maybe that's just because of nostalgia of watching NFL Network. But so far, it hasn't been too bad, 2-2. I expected them to maybe be a little bit worse. Derek Carr actually has played pretty well so far. No interceptions, 8 touchdowns. Josh Jacobs has been pretty good so far. Henry Ruggs has he hasn't done much, but I think this team it might be a wild card spot. It really might. It depends on how the rest of the AFC does, as well as the rest of the people in their division. In third place, there's actually a tie between third and fourth. The Los Angeles Chargers officially hold third place. Justin Herbert has officially taken over, and he looks pretty solid so far. Gus Bradley is actually surprisingly running a pretty solid defense. They're 11th in the league so far, which is pretty good. They have a pretty easy schedule coming up. They play New Orleans, who we'll get to later, but then they got Jets, Dolphins, Jaguars, and Raiders. I mean, if Herbert can get this team going and the defense keeps doing what they're doing, they're the subject of last week's episode, but you never know, man. The AFC is a little bit weird this year. In last place is Denver. I was very high on Denver. I thought they were going to be very good this year. But then Drew Lock gets hurt in the first game. Philip Lindsay has been hurt, and it hasn't been good. Jerry Jeudy looks very good so far. Melvin Gordon looks like it's a solid signing. But now they got 3 quarterbacks. They got Jeff Driscoll, who also got hurt. They got Brett Rippon, who actually, contrary to the 3 interceptions he threw in that Jets game, I didn't think he looked horrible. But, I see a future quarterback carousel brewing in the Mile High area. Vic Fangio, I personally don't think he's a good head coach. I think he should have stayed in Chicago and kept being the defensive coordinator. Maybe that's just me being biased. Now, we will move on to the NFC, the National Football Conference, and we'll start with the NFC East. This division should just be deleted. None of these teams deserve to make the playoffs. In first place is somehow Philadelphia. I don't really know how, because Philly has just been clobbered with injuries. I mean, I'm just looking at this now. Look at all of these injuries that have. I'll read them off. Alshon Jeffrey, Jalen Reagor, Fletcher Cox, Corey Clement, Deshaun Jackson, Malik Jackson, Lane Johnson, Jason Kelsey, Jason Peters, Jatavis Brown, Marquise Goodwin, Brandon Brooks, Vinny Curry, Andre Dillard. These are all starting caliber or high draft pick players. I mean, this is ridiculous. I remember the Bears had to go through this kind of thing with a lot of injuries a few years ago, and it was just horrible. You know who else has been horrible is Carson Wentz. 4 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 60% completion percentage. It just hasn't been it, man. I don't really know what's wrong with him. I really don't know. I thought Carson Wentz was going to have a good year, but I'm starting to suspect that maybe Doug Peterson wasn't the reason why this team won a Super Bowl. It might have just, been some guy named Nick who was kind of good at QB. If this team gets healthy and actually plays up to how their talent should be, it's playoff contender easily. But it's just, Philly just kind of baffles me, man. I don't really know what to think about this squad. In second place, we have the Washington football team. I was not expecting it, man. I really didn't think. I didn't think Washington was going to go like 0-16, but I didn't really think they were going to be second in the division. I think that just speaks more to how bad the East is, though. They somehow took out Philly in the first game and then have lost 3 straight to, 3 solid teams. But, Ron Rivera is their head coach. I really don't think he should be coaching right now. He's battling cancer, and hopefully he just takes it down easily. It was kind of hard to watch. He's clearly going through some stuff. I think he should just take the year off, come back better, and improve this team. I actually thought their defense was going to be pretty good. Jack Del Rio is their defensive coordinator. I think he's a solid coordinator. Dwayne Haskins has not been great so far. I didn't think he was too bad coming out of Ohio State. With the exception of Kirk Cousins, they have not had a long-term serviceable quarterback in the last century. They got, 1 productive year out of RG3, 2 at the most. Then they messed them up. They had like washed up Donovan McNabb for a little bit. They didn't really have anyone else. As long as Dan Snyder is still here, they're just not going to make that much noise, which is really unfortunate because the DC area fan base is actually very loyal and they had a very good team culture when they were good in the 80s. But, man, Dan Snyder, he should just sell the team. He's a nutcase and does not deserve to have an NFL team. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, just look up what is going on with this team. Look at all the stuff that is happening behind the scenes, in addition to the name change. The name change is ridiculous, I know. But just look up all the other stupid stuff that Dan Snyder has done the past 20 years. It's just ridiculous. He shouldn't be anywhere near a franchise. But I digress. In third place is the Dallas Cowboys. I know a lot of NFL fans are extremely happy to see this. I don't really understand, but, I also kind of do. Mike McCarthy, I don't really think is that good of a head coach. I think he coasts off high-end talent and doesn't deserve a lot of the credit he deserves. Deserve a lot of the credit he gets. They have the 3rd best offense in the league. The offense has been booming. Dak Prescott is showing that last year was not a fluke. Zeke seems to be doing his thing. Amari Cooper is off to a good year. I think that if their offense continues to do what they do, but their defense isn't, the worst in the league, this team might be a playoff contender. Just might, though. Their offensive coordinator is Kellen Moore, who I think should have been the real head coach instead of Mike McCarthy. Kellen Moore, in my opinion, is going to be one of the better coaches in the league in a few years. Because if you think about it, when he came out of Boise State, he led the Boise State college team to their best stretch in club history. And then he went into the NFL, had no athleticism, not really that much talent, and he stayed in the league for 4 years, essentially just being a coach, even though he wore pads. But Mike Nolan, their defensive coordinator, I don't know much about him, but what I do know, he should be fired. They got to fix that defense, and if they do, this is a playoff team. I think it is. In last place is the sad case of the New York Giants. Joe Judge is off to a pretty rough start. They got the worst offense in the league. It's just really unfortunate, man. I actually like a lot of the players on the team. They have a respectable offense, but they lost Saquon. Sterling Shepard has been banged up. Darius Slayton hasn't been great so far. Danny Dimes has been under duress in the pocket a lot. I like the team that they're building in New York. I think their offense is going to be really good. But their defense is just, it's not great. But then again, this is what happens when you hire a special teams coach as your head coach. I know Joe Judge is from the New England factory, and he's supposed to be amazing. But you know what, man? Don't hire a special teams coordinator as your head coach. Just don't do it. And don't hire Jason Garrett as your offensive coordinator. What has Jason Garrett, ever done? I know he was coach of the year, but yeah, whatever. Also, other notable assistants, Freddie Kitchens is their tight end coach. Are they trying to be bullied? I don't understand what they're doing over there. If I'm Saquon Barkley, I'm recovering from my torn ACL and I'm getting the heck out of there, because at this point, I mean, it's kind of not really a good morale move, but why waste your prime on a team that's not going to be anywhere near good in the next 3 years, because that defense is not getting better anytime soon. First division in the NFC down. We're going to move now to the NFC South. And so far, Tampa Bay has the advantage. Bruce Arians, he's a complicated head coach. I think he's a good one, but Bruce Arians' offenses are known to be very intricate and very complicated. Tom Brady has said it himself. It's the toughest offense he's ever had to play in. Well, I mean, considering he's played in 2, it's not that bad, but we're finally getting the answer to the question, is Tom Brady a system QB? No, he's not, obviously. So finally put that narrative to rest. He's not off to a fantastic start. He's thrown kind of a high amount of interceptions. 4 through 4 games. It's a little high for him. But you know what? He doesn't look too bad so far. Ronald Jones looks like a serviceable running back. Mike Evans is doing his thing. Chris Godwin has been hurt. JPP has been a little bit hurt. But I think this is a playoff team. If their young defense, led by Devin White and Jamal Dean, can develop, this might be a Super Bowl team. It's just, it's got Tom Brady on it. It's always a Super Bowl team. Their offensive coordinator is also Todd Bowles, who he wasn't a great head coach in the Jets, but when he was the defensive coordinator of the Cardinals, when they had Carson Palmer, they had a mean defense. So I think Tampa Bay is in a good spot. Hopefully they take an L to my Bears, though. In second place is Carolina. I didn't really know what to think about this team. Again, Teddy Bridgewater is going to do his thing. He's very mediocre. He's not going to impress anyone, but he's not going to let you down either. He hasn't played too bad. I think Matt Rule and David Tepper are a really nice duo in the front office. David Tepper has done the really tough job of entering the rebuild. I think Matt Rule is a good guy to have as your head coach. Robbie Anderson has been solid so far. They've lost McCaffrey, though, so they've lost their entire offense, essentially. Mike Davis is doing his best to fill in. But, Panthers are a little bit of a wild card. I think just like, I forgot what team just like the Titans, I thought this team was either going to be mediocre or trash. So far, they're leaning towards mediocre again. The middle of the pack in defense and offense, and I think they're going to stay that way. In third place, I don't know why, but in third place is New Orleans. They're also 2-2. And, I mean, it's tough. It's tough to watch, man, because I thought this is a bona fide Super Bowl contender. I thought this was my favorite. Drew Brees he doesn't have it anymore, man. I'm just going to say this now. He doesn't have it anymore. There was always those memes from 2 years ago that he could only throw slant routes now. They're kind of starting to come true. And it's really been exposed since you don't have Michael Thomas anymore. Alvin Kamara has been off to a red-hot start, but Drew Brees, he's missing throws. He's making some mistakes. I don't know, man. You can't lose to the Raiders. You just can't lose to the Raiders. They beat the Lions after they blew another lead. They got taken out by the Packers. That's fine. You just can't lose to Vegas, man. You just can't lose. And the Saints are always going to have kind of a tough schedule, but I think this team's going to sneak into the playoffs, but I don't know if they're going to go much farther than that. In last place in the NFC South is Atlanta. I did not think this team would be last. I thought it would be Carolina, but I didn't think it would be Atlanta. How does this happen? You got Matt Ryan, you got Calvin Ridley, Julio Jones. You bring back hometown hero Todd Gurley. But you know why? It's because Dan Quinn is just not a good head coach. I used to think he was, but when you have the second worst defense in the league and you're a defensive-minded head coach, that should set off some alarm bells in the mind of Arthur Blank, their owner. Fire him, Atlanta. Fire him. He does not deserve to run this team anymore. You fired Kyle Shanahan, you let him walk after 28-3. Cut it off at the source. Fire Dan Quinn and just try to reboot the squad. I think you still got Matt Ryan for like 2 more years. If they fire him early and get a new head coach, they might be able to patch this up. All right, so our second to last division that we're going to cover tonight is the NFC West. This, I think, is the most competitive division in the league. That's just my personal opinion. It's either that or the AFC North. But I think in the NFC West, all 4 of these teams could win the division, in my opinion. At 4-0 is the Seattle Seahawks. It's about time, man. It's about time this team just, took everyone out. Russell Wilson is playing out of his mind. 1,200 yards, 16 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. For reference, not only is 16 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns a game, which is ridiculous, it's also ties Peyton Manning's record through 4 games of amount of touchdowns thrown. And that year that Peyton Manning threw 16 touchdowns through 4 games, he didn't really do much. He just went on to throw 55 in a season, which, broke the amount of touchdowns in a single season, broke that record, but whatever. Seattle has just been steamrolling everyone. They've put up at least 31 points in every game they've played. Granted, their defense has not been great. Their defense has not been fantastic. They're 21st in the league, but they got the second best offense. They've dealt with a few injuries themselves, but DK Metcalf has really emerged as a really nice receiver. Tyler Lockett hasn't been too bad either, but I predicted that Russell Wilson would win Offensive Player of the Year this year. He might win MVP, man. He might win MVP. He definitely deserves it. Russell Wilson is one of the most underrated players in NFL history. Boom, I said it. This guy has carried an otherwise mediocre Seattle team the past few years to the playoffs every single year in a loaded division. And I'm glad that they're finally off to a good start. Pete Carroll, he's still going, man. He has been a really solid head coach for 15 years now, if you combined when he was a coach at USC back in the days of scandals in college football. But I was not alive for that. The NFC West, the next team in second place is the Los Angeles Rams. They are off to a 3-1 start. Sean McVay, I think he's a really good head coach, and they're doing a pretty good job. I really like the way that the Rams are approaching their team. It's pay them first, ask questions later, which I think is actually very unlike their owner, Stan Kroenke, who is a huge sleazebag. They never should have moved to LA in the first place. But you know what, man? If you think about it, most of that core that they went to the Super Bowl with a few years ago, drafted in St. Louis, so they got roots there. But 14th offense in the league, not too good. Not bad either though. Sixth best defense though. Excuse me. That has been very good. Jared Goff so far, he's thrown for a good amount of yards, touchdown to interception ratio, not fantastic. But, the thing is they've kind of lacked the running back, obviously, because they don't have Todd Gurley anymore. So they've had to rely on this kind of concoction of Malcolm Brown and Darrell Henderson. They don't have C.J. Anderson anymore. They still have a good, pretty solid receiving core. They got Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. My concern, though, is I don't personally think either one of them are good enough to be number one receivers. That's just my opinion. But you know what? McVay is going to find a way to make it work. because that's what great coaches do. They also have Tyler Higbee and Gerald Everett as well, two very solid tight ends. Do I think this team is going to go back to like the 13-3 Super Bowl form from a few years ago? I don't think so, but they could very well finish second in the division, if not win it, depending on how Seattle and the third and fourth place teams do down the line. In third place is the San Francisco 49ers. This team has been rocked with a combination of just terrible luck and really bad injuries. They lost... Okay, look at this injury report here. Okay, look at this. Tevin Coleman, Dee Ford, Jimmy Garoppolo, Dre Greenlaw, George Kittle, Raheem Mostert, Ahkello Witherspoon, Jason Verrett, Travis Benjamin, Weston Richburg, Tavon Austin, Nick Bosa, Deebo Samuel, Richard Sherman, Solomon Thomas, Chris Thompson. They've all missed time somewhere around this season. Jimmy G, he's not really that good of a QB to start with, but he's a game manager, and he's better than Nick Mullins and CJ Beathard. Really sucks that he hurt his ankle. Nick Bosa is just terrible that he tore his ACL. That is just horrible. San Francisco, I've heard somewhere that Levi Stadium has always had like kind of field issues somewhere on the grass, like is not really particularly like playable, but they got all their injuries in the Jets game at MetLife Stadium, so it hasn't really came down to that. But they've just had horrible luck, I think Kyle Shanahan's a pretty good head coach. They extended him for a few more years. Their defense is still pretty solid. Their offense is not too bad either. I think the key for them is getting healthy again, getting Jimmy G back, and just unleashing George Kittle. That's all they need to do. Robert Saleh is, in my opinion, probably the best defensive coordinator in the league. But this team is gonna. I think they gotta. It really depends, man. The NFC West is a really interesting division. All of these teams are in an okay to really good spot, but down the line, it's going to be really, really interesting to see which teams completely crash and which teams keep going in the right direction. And in last place is the Arizona Cardinals. Man, these guys had sky-high expectations this year. Cliff Kingsbury, I don't think he's a horrible head coach. I don't think he's anything great, but, bad head coaches have won Super Bowls in the past. Kyler Murray looks pretty good this year. I think Kyler Murray is going to be a good player in the NFL. I think he really does have the potential. The interceptions are a little high, but it's a little bit unusual. Kyler Murray doesn't usually throw that many picks, but, he's really lethal in the run game. DeAndre Hopkins has not been crazy this year, but it's his first time in a new team, new system. Christian Kirk has, I think, spent a little bit of time injured. Andy Isabella has tried to step up as well. Andy Isabella, I think he was a second-round pick at a UMass. Really fast, track guy, kind of short, but he'll burn you, man. This Cardinals team has got a lot of speed. They got a solid running back in Kenyon Drake. Chase Edmonds is a solid option. And they still got Larry Fitz, man. Larry Fitz is going to be there till the end of time, man. It's just, he's such a god. And I don't really know why he's still here, because he's gotten kind of disrespected. But you know what, man? You can't take away loyalty. And it's really nice. This Cardinals team, I didn't really expect them to do much this year. I thought they could sneak into the playoffs. But again, just like the rest of the NFC West, it's going to be this next stretch for them is really crucial. We have to see if Kyler Murray can limit the turnovers and DeAndre Hopkins can get back to his former self. You might be looking at a playoff team. Our final division is, I saved this one intentionally, the NFC North. We'll start at the top. Green Bay is 3-0. I predicted a few months ago Aaron Rodgers still has one really good season left in him. And it pains me to say this, but it might be this season. Green Bay has the best offense in the league. Aaron Rodgers is angry because he doesn't even like Matt LaFleur anyway. And they drafted a quarterback in the first round. And you can't draft a quarterback when you have Aaron Rodgers, because he might just go full Liam Neeson and just kill you. Like, you never know, man. But defense hasn't been too bad. They're 18th in the league. Aaron Rodgers, 13 touchdowns, no interceptions, 1,200 yards, 70% completion percentage. He's been on fire, man. He has been really good. He's just been dotting everyone up, and it is very scary because I've seen this before. But he also has been eliminated in the NFC Championship, like 5 times now? So, whatever. Aaron Jones seems to be doing all right. Mason Crosby hasn't missed a field goal yet. Another sign that hell has frozen over. But this Packers team, it pains me to say this, but if they keep it up, they're gonna get a first round bye. They're probably gonna get to the championship. Will Rodgers blow it again? Again, it depends, man. If he gets hurt or if he somehow gets worse down the stretch, which is a very un-Rodgers thing to do, this team might fall. But you know what? Right now, if you're a Packers fan, you should like where your team's at. We're gonna skip the second place team. Third place is the Minnesota Vikings. Man, this team they've just fallen off, man. Mike Zimmer, the glasses man himself, has given them the 14th best offense, pretty solid, but 26th in the NFL in defense. And that is it's just not great. Kirk Cousins has not really been that good. Dalvin Cook is off to a very good start, 424 yards, 6 touchdowns. But, man, Kirk Cousins, he's got that $84 million guaranteed contract. He doesn't really seem to care. And not just about his play, but just about, the league in general. I saw he said, I think a few months ago, he said about the virus, if I die, I die. I don't know if I would go that far, but I would be pretty nonchalant if I had an $84 million guaranteed contract. But, man, Kirk Cousins he just isn't it. he's just not it. I don't really think this team's going to go that far if Kirk Cousins continues to be mediocre, especially with the defense not having Anthony Barr. That's a huge loss. Mike Hughes has been a little bit banged up. Michael Pierce has been a little bit banged up. Danielle Hunter is on IR. It's just, I don't really see this team making the playoffs. With the NFC as packed as it always is, the Vikings, I think, are going to be the odd man out. And it sucks because they've wasted so much talent. Like Adam Thielen, they've just wasted him. But, sucks to suck. I don't know. In last place, I don't know how. This team should probably be 4-0. But it's Detroit. Not surprising. I thought this team was going to finish last. I didn't think it would be this painful, though. Matt Patricia, in my opinion, is not a competent head coach. I think he should be fired. And they have effectively wasted Matthew Stafford for now 11 years, I think. Matthew Stafford so far doesn't seem to be doing horrible. He's just the normal gunslinger. A lot of yards, good amount of touchdowns, relatively high interceptions. The Adrian Peterson signing so far has been very good. Kerryon Johnson's been a little bit banged up. DeAndre Swift had the touchdown in his hands in week 1, but then dropped it, which I think signals how the season has gone for Detroit pretty well. 18th offense, not horrible. 29th defense, not very good. It's just, it's tough to be a Lions fan, man. Jeff Okudah hasn't looked too bad so far. I think this team has potential to go to the playoffs under better coaching. And that brings us to the final team. I kept this one last for a reason. It's none other than my Chicago Bears. They're 3-1. They are 3-1. I can't take that away from them. Let's start with the elephant in the room, the quarterback controversy. I will stand by this opinion until he is out of the league. Is Mitchell Trubisky a bust? By definition, yes. Is he the worst quarterback in the league? Is he the worst quarterback ever? No. And anyone who thinks that, I will call you out. You are wrong. He is not the worst quarterback in the league. You only think that because you look at all the memes on Instagram that say, oh, he's so bad. Even though if you actually watch him play, it's not really that bad. You ever see him scramble? You see how good outside of the pocket he is? No, because you don't actually watch him. Have you ever seen Ryan Leaf? Look up Ryan Leaf. Look up his story. Look up how much of a cancer he was out off the field and how terrible he was on the field. How he was out of the league after like 2 seasons. And you compare that to Mitchell Trubisky. You understand how much pressure there is to be a quarterback in Chicago? This team has not had a 4,000-yard passer in its 100-year history. Okay? In addition to the fact that he has to play in one of the biggest media cities in the entire country. In addition to the fact that he was drafted over Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes, who is the cover of the league right now. He is the most popular NFL player in the entire world right now. You understand the pressure that he has and the fact that he hasn't lived up to expectations that were impossible in the first place? But it's okay. It's okay. They traded for Nick Foles. They traded for a situational quarterback who makes $25 million a year to sit on the bench for 2.5 games. And you know what? Comes back in the Atlanta game, throws 3 touchdowns. I can't argue with that. You know what? Nick Foles is a good player. He's served his purpose in the league. He's a Super Bowl MVP. He's a great guy to have on the team. But it only adds to the level of pressure that this team has, especially for Trubisky, because now he has to have the Super Bowl MVP breathing down his neck every second of his career. Okay? Think about what that does for morale, what that does for your confidence in yourself, knowing that your own head coach doesn't believe in you and would essentially start like a career backup minus 3 good playoff games over you in a heartbeat. Okay? So I will defend Mitchell Trubisky until he's out of the league. But, I have bigger fish to fry anyway. So Nick Foles, he takes over in the first game that he starts against the Colts. Good defense. I won't deny that. They have a good defense. But you'd basically put up a field goal and a garbage time touchdown versus the Colts at home with the Super Bowl MVP. That is unacceptable. That is unacceptable. How dare you waste Khalil Mack and Akeem Hicks and Roquan Smith playing their heart out every week just to muster 11 points against the Colts. How dare you do that? But, it's okay. Because you know who that garbage time touchdown went to? It went to Allen Robinson. But you know what? He's not a number 1 receiver. He's not the best receiver we've had since Brandon Marshall, which was half a decade ago. You're not going to pay him. We're not going to pay him. He doesn't deserve the money. Allen Robinson single-handedly carries this offense, at least a passing game, especially since Tariq Cohen, one of the most likable players on the team, suffered a season-ending injury. Why is this team not paying Allen Robinson? I don't understand. He is the best player on your offense. If it wasn't for Khalil Mack and Akeem Hicks, he's the best player on your team. You do not let Robinson go. You keep him until he is physically unable to play at the same level that he's playing currently. You re-sign Allen Robinson. If you're listening to me, Ryan Pace, which you aren't, but if you are, you need to pay him. Pay him whatever he wants. Tariq Cohen took a pay cut for you to re-sign Allen Robinson. The stars are aligned. Get it done. Lock him up. He wants to be on the team. Sign him. But again, there are bigger fish to fry because, every problem on this team, it doesn't come from Trubisky. It doesn't come from Pace. It doesn't come from Virginia McCaskey. It comes from Matt Nagy. Matt Nagy is one of the most incompetent head coaches in the league and does not deserve to be at least calling plays. Matt Nagy apparently is such this good head coach. He won Coach of the Year. You know who else won Coach of the Year? Jason Garrett. Jason Garrett won Coach of the Year. Look at where he is now. A meme who's the offensive coordinator of the worst offense in the league. Coach of the Year means next to nothing in the NFL. Matt Nagy is not a good head coach. But Daniel, he comes from the Andy Reid coaching tree. That means he's really good. You know what? He might not be able to manage a game clock or keep leads, but you know what? The man drafts well, he's a likable guy, and he's a Super Bowl winner. And if Matt Nagy is from the Andy Reid coaching tree, he has all of Andy Reid's weaknesses and none of his strengths. Matt Nagy is not a likable guy. He is not a career football man. He's not a Super Bowl winner. He doesn't draft particularly well like Andy Reid does. I know that doesn't all rest on him, but you know what? He is not Andy Reid. You can't compare someone to their coaching tree ancestor in every way. He is not Andy Reid. He doesn't know how to manage a game clock. His play calling is some of the worst I've ever seen. You have not one, not two, but three good running backs in David Montgomery, Tariq Cohen, and Cordero Patterson. But it's okay. We're just going to call the same run play every single time. This is not what a good head coach does. Good head coaches adapt in the middle of the game. They realize that the Indianapolis Colts have DeForest Buckner, one of the best run stoppers in the entire league. And so they say, maybe I shouldn't run up the middle when I don't have the best offensive line. But it's okay. That defense will just bail me out. You know what? That defense has done exceptionally well given the circumstances. They have to play 3 quarters of the game, and the last quarter, they have to sit and watch this lame excuse for an offense. Nagy has to get it together or get out of the city. I'm done dealing with this incompetence at head coach. He should be nowhere near the play calling sheet. Give it up. Give it up to anyone but Nagy. I could call the game better than he does. I could do a better job than Matt Nagy at play calling. There is almost nothing redeeming about him as a head coach. He has repeatedly neglected his best players. He's completely mangled the kicking situation, the quarterback carousel, Allen Robinson's contract situation. And for what? 1 12-4 season where you lose a wild card game you were supposed to win? An 8-8 season the following year that did nothing but bring even more turmoil to the city? He should not be the head coach of this team. I don't care that they're 3-1. They deserve to be 0-4. The only reason why this team is 3-1 is because the Lions dropped a pass, the Giants got a bad pass interference call, and Atlanta was Atlanta. They deserve to lose to the Colts. They deserve to have lost the other 3 games. This is what this Bears team needs to do. I'm not going to go all negative. This is what they need to do. Matt Nagy needs to learn how to adapt to a moving game. He needs to realize what his strengths and weaknesses are so far. And he needs to adapt. He needs to change his game plan throughout the game. That's what all good head coaches do. This is why he is not a good head coach. This is what the Bears need to do. In my opinion, right now, start Foles. He's the better option. He's the better fit for the offense. Should they get rid of Trubisky? Depends on what options they have in the offseason. I'm not looking that far yet. You need to sign Allen Robinson. Give him whatever he wants. You keep Khalil Mack happy because sooner or later he's going to demand a trade because you know he's not going to deal with this. Make this offense work. It's shown flashes of being amazing. This team is a Super Bowl contender if they actually live up to the hype. So, I got a message for you, Bears. At the time of recording this, you take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in 30 minutes. Take them down. Show Brady who's boss. Sorry to ramble a little bit. I'm just very frustrated with this Bears team, even though they're 3-1. But that is going to conclude the second episode of the Commissioner's Office. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review on our Apple podcast page. Check us out on Spotify as well as WNTH.com. You can find us there as well. Sorry for a little bit of the longer episode, but I think it's fitting. I'd like to thank everybody for listening, and I will see you all next time.